Hello everyone, welcome to Deep Journal channel. By liking our video, you can make it reach a much wider audience.
Fears are growing about an increasingly violent escalation between Iran-backed groups and U.S. forces. Amid tight security measures, hundreds of Shiite militiamen and supporters converged in Baghdad for the symbolic funeral procession of 4 fighters killed in Monday's U.S. strike along Iraq-Syria border, calling for retaliation. The American raids early on Monday sparked an exchange of fire between pro-Iranian militias in the U.S.-led coalition in eastern Syria, and heightened fears of a new U.S.-Iran escalation amid ongoing efforts to revive Tehran's 2015 nuclear deal with major powers. With chants of "Death to America" and "Vengeance for the Martyrs," the Hash members massed in Freedom Square near the Iraqi capital's high-security Green Zone where the U.S. Embassy is located. Security forces were deployed in large numbers, sealing off the Green Zone after a string of recent incursions by armed groups backed by Washington's arch-enemy Tehran. Several high-ranking Hash figures took part in the symbolic funeral, including its top commander Fallah al-Fayeh and Hadi al-Amiri, head of one of its main factions, the Badr organization. Many of the mourners, accompanied by vehicles packed with armed men, wore black and held up signs reading, "Attacks on the Hash must speed up the withdrawal of American troops from Iraq." Others carried pictures of the revered Iranian General Qasem Soleimani and Hashdi's former second-in-command Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, who were killed in a U.S. drone strike near Baghdad airport early last year. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights War Monitoring Group said on Tuesday that 9 fighters were killed in the strikes near the Albu Kamal district on the Syrian side of the border, updating an earlier toll after 2 of the wounded had succumbed to their injuries. Threats to retaliate are not simply posturing. On Monday evening, Iran-backed groups stationed in eastern Syria launched rockets against U.S. and Kurdish forces at the Omar oil field. Media outlets linked to the groups including Sabrine News said the rocket attacks were the first act of retaliation against the U.S. There were no reported casualties, but past escalations have seen U.S. soldiers killed, followed by retaliatory airstrikes on the militias. The PMF is an umbrella organization of militia groups ostensibly under Iraqi government control, although the majority of them are backed by Iran. Some banners read, "The blood of our sons will terminate America forever," and, targeting PMF must expedite the evacuation and withdrawal of all foreign troops. Some shouted, "Death, death for America," and, "No, no for America." Iraqi security forces have closed off all roads leading to Baghdad's Hurriya Square in Jadariya neighborhood. The group earlier reported that a weapons store had been destroyed. The Hash, most of whose commanders are backed by Tehran and which has become the main power broker in Baghdad, said 4 of its fighters were killed in the Qam region near the border. The fighters were stationed there to prevent jihadists infiltrating Iraq, the group said, denying they had taken part in any attacks against U.S. interests or personnel and warning they had the legal right to respond and hold the perpetrators accountable on Iraqi soil. Baghdad resident Khloud Jawad furiously pumped her fist into air when the 4 wooden coffins that were wrapped with the Iraqi flags passed by. "Allahu Akbar, America is the great Satan," she shouted. "America wants to create chaos in Iraq," Ms. Jawad, 51, who is an English teacher, told The National. U.S. wants to return and occupy the country again, but with the presence of the Islamic resistance this will not happen, she said as she wore a black, ankle-length traditional abaya and wrapped the Iraqi flag around her neck. "We, and our sons in the Hashed, will never stay silent after this attack, for sure. There will be escalation," she said, using the Arabic name for the PMF. The anti-American sentiment was shared by her friend Ewan Sherwin, who believes Iraq can defend and protect itself without the help of outsiders. Iraq is a sovereign state with a constitution and security forces that are able to protect its people. Why haven't the American troops have not left yet? Ms. Sherwin, 36, said. American presence in Iraq must be terminated. Top militia commanders, Fallah al-Fayeh, Hadi al-Amiri who head Badr brigades, as well as several high-ranking figures attended the funeral. They did not make any statements. The funeral procession was short and stayed outside the green zone, unlike the 2019 funeral for several PMF fighters who were also killed by U.S. airstrikes. In a rare event, the Iraqi government strongly condemned the airstrikes, calling the attack a violation of its sovereignty. Hadi Jallow-Mari, chairman of the political decision think tank in Baghdad, said the unprecedented stance from the government could explain internal and external pressures. Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi is trying to restore the relations with al-Hashd after series of failed attempts in which he tried to rein in pro-Iran groups, Mr. Mari said. He said the results of the Iranian elections and Iran's ongoing negotiations with world power have also forced Baghdad to revisit its policy or at least want to unify the internal front. However, the government's stance will not stop these groups from launching retaliatory attacks, he said. The Pentagon said the strikes targeted operational and weapons storage facilities at 2 locations in Syria and 1 in Iraq, all near the common border, that had been used by militias engaged in drone attacks against U.S. interests in Iraq. U.S. forces were subsequently attacked by multiple rockets in eastern Syria, but there were no casualties and personnel conducted counter-battery artillery fire at rocket launching positions, coalition spokesman Wayne Maroto said on Twitter. U.S. Department of Defense, Pentagon spokesperson John Kirby made a statement regarding the missile attack on the U.S. military base in Syria's Deir-ez-Zor region. According to Sputnik, Kirby said in a statement to the press, "The missile attack on our military base in Syria caused damage to 2 buildings as well as loss of life," said Wayne Maroto, the spokesperson for the U.S. Operation Natural Stability in Syria and Iraq, also confirmed the attack. The U.S. military, together with the Syrian Democratic Forces armed formations, controls the territory north of the Deir-ez-Zor, Hasaka and Raqqa regions, where Syria's largest oil and gas fields are located. American forces in Iraq, where 2,500 U.S. troops are deployed as part of an international coalition to fight the jihadist Daesh group, have been targeted in more than 40 attacks this year. Monday's strikes were the second such deadly raid on pro-Iran targets since U.S. President Joe Biden took office. Secretary of State Antony Blinken declared that the U.S. airstrikes on pro-Iran fighters in Iraq and Syria sent a strong message not to keep attacking U.S. forces in Iraq. Iraq's Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi condemned the strikes as an unacceptable violation of Iraqi sovereignty and Iraqi national security, and warned against any escalation. Iranian Navy started an exercise called Sustainable Security 1400 in the Caspian Sea with the code Ya Hussein and the theme of peace and friendship. The Iranian Army Navy started an exercise called Sustainable Security 1400 in the Caspian Sea today with the code Ya Hussein and the theme of peace and friendship. This naval exercise is conducted with the participation of Navy commando units as well as various surface and flight units of the Navy, including missile launchers, fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, electronic warfare systems. The exercise, called Sustainable Security 1400, is carried out in an area of approximately 77,000 square kilometers in the 20% region of the Islamic Republic of Iran in the Caspian Sea.